Hey there, welcome to Sci-Fi Dimension. You can hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications to join us on new adventures. If you're ready, let's dive in.
Lyra leaned against the smooth metal wall of the observation deck, her long ears twitching slightly as she watched Earth rotate beneath the starship. It was one thing to study planets in data files, quite another to see the blue marble spinning slowly in the vast blackness. She tapped her tablet absently, recording her thoughts in what she insisted was a scientifically rigorous, yet entertaining format. The notes were already laced with jokes. Humans appear to enjoy chaos, often celebrating it with caffeine and pastries. Must investigate further. She glanced at the human crew members scattered around the deck. They fussed over navigation screens, jabbed at consoles, and occasionally muttered incomprehensible phrases like, "I think we missed the warp coordinate again," or "Who brought pineapple on the pizza?" Lyra stifled a giggle. Pineapple on pizza. Humans were an unpredictable species indeed. From a purely biological standpoint, they seemed remarkably fragile, yet their sense of humor was surprisingly resilient. She made a mental note. Laughter may be a survival mechanism. "Lyra, are you recording again?" asked Commander Jex, glancing over the rim of his glasses. His voice carried the calm authority of someone used to keeping starships in order, though his tie was slightly askew and his coffee cup threatened to topple over every time he shifted. "Of course," Lyra said, flicking a finger across her tablet. "I am meticulously documenting the absurdities of human behavior. For example, the coordinated panic they call morning routines is both fascinating and terrifying." Jex shook his head but smiled despite himself. "You're enjoying this too much." Lyra tilted her head, her ears brushing against the collar of her tunic. "On the contrary, Commander, I am maintaining objectivity. Humor is simply another data point." She tapped a note into her tablet, adding, "Data point. Commander Jex wears coffee stains as a badge of honor." Her mission was clear, though she liked to approach it as a grand experiment. Study human reproduction. To Lyra, the concept was endlessly intriguing and not merely scientific. Humans had such strange rituals, so many awkward gestures and verbal stumbles, yet somehow it worked. It puzzled her. In the galaxy, most species reproduced either via highly efficient genetic pods, spontaneous cellular division, or, in the case of a few less socially evolved species, aggressive wrestling matches. Humans seemed to prefer confusion, laughter, and shared embarrassment. Lyra pulled up a holographic projection of human anatomy, flicking her fingers over glowing charts. She frowned at the complexity. Why would evolution favor such inefficiency? She muttered. Then, as if testing herself, she whispered, "Or maybe the inefficiency is the point." She made a quick note. Hypothesis: awkwardness is essential to bonding. The observation deck doors slid open with a soft hiss, and a human technician, Marla, entered carrying a tray of what appeared to be snacks. Lyra's ears perked immediately. Marla's offerings were oddly shaped cookies, some with sprinkles, others with curious swirls of frosting. "I thought you might like these," Marla said, smiling nervously. "They're, edible." Lyra tilted her head. "Are these part of a human courtship ritual, offering sustenance in exchange for approval?" She reached for a cookie, sniffed it, and nibbled delicately. "Fascinating, palatable." Marla blinked. Thanks." She quickly left, muttering something about paperwork. Lyra scribbled another note: snack distribution, possible mating strategy, further observation required. The starship hummed quietly as it orbited closer to Earth. Lyra floated to the panoramic window, her long ears brushing the glass, and watched the continents drift beneath. Cities were clusters of glittering lights, rivers wound like silver threads, and clouds cast shadows that looked like drifting islands. She imagined humans below, oblivious to her presence, stumbling through the rituals she found so endlessly entertaining. "Why do they always need so many steps?" she muttered, speaking to herself. The concept of reproduction could be reduced to two functions and a bit of timing, but no, They dance, they blush, they apologize mid-process. Fascinating. Her ears twitched as the first joke of the day occurred to her. Perhaps humans invented embarrassment as a way to make reproduction interesting. It is, after all, far too efficient otherwise. One could hardly call a race playful if it merely duplicated itself like some sterile machine. Jex's voice interrupted her thoughts. Lyra, are you planning to practice your human humor observations again today? Absolutely, she said, grinning. I intend to immerse myself fully. I will engage in controlled social experiments, examine emotional reactions, and perhaps, if ethical parameters allow, attempt preliminary flirtation protocols. She scribbled another note, ethical boundaries. Still a suggestion, not a rule. A soft alarm pinged, signaling their approach to the outer atmosphere. The ship's engines adjusted, and Lyra felt the slight shift of gravity. She floated back toward the center of the deck, her ears adjusting to the subtle vibrations of the hull. She imagined herself landing among humans for the first time, awkwardly blending in while secretly recording every chaotic nuance. Prepare for descent, Commander, she said cheerfully, though she added under her breath, prepare also for inevitable hilarity. As the ship pierced the clouds, she pressed her hands to the glass and whispered, "Let the human experiment begin." Her ears twitched in anticipation, and she couldn't resist muttering one final note. Observation: humans are absurd. Conclusion: I am delighted. The blue-green sphere grew larger beneath her, cities sparkling like misplaced jewelry, rivers gleaming, and forests waving like tiny flags. Lyra's eyes gleamed with curiosity and mischief. For the first time, she felt that mix of scientific thrill and personal amusement, a combination humans seemed to call excitement. She straightened her posture, adjusting her uniform. Today I will learn about them. Today I will laugh with them. And perhaps, she said, almost conspiratorially, I will discover what all the fuss about reproduction truly is. Her long ears twitched once more as she glanced at the approaching planet. A single thought danced across her mind. This may be the most entertaining field study of my life. And with that, Lyra prepared to step onto Earth, unaware that the hilarity, awkwardness, and surprising intimacy awaiting her would challenge everything she thought she knew about science and herself. Lyra's boots clicked against the tile floor of the airport terminal as she disembarked. Humans bustled around her in waves of motion and sound, luggage carts squeaking, announcements blaring, phones chiming. She tilted her head, ears brushing the hood of her coat, and observed. Humans seemed to live in perpetual chaos. Perhaps this was a prerequisite for their reproductive process. She jotted a note, preliminary observation. Disorder may stimulate attraction, must monitor closely. She navigated toward the exit, careful to mimic the human's haphazard stride. One man collided with her shoulder, muttering, "Sorry, I'm late for work." Lyra blinked. Late for work? Strange ritual. Hypothesis. Humans compete for social dominance before attempting reproduction. She tapped a quick note on her tablet and continued, suppressing a smile. Outside, the sun reflected off glass towers, and traffic honked in what she suspected was a primitive form of communication. Lyra had studied Earth's machines before, but seeing them in motion was different. Humans seemed oddly proud of their inefficiency. A delivery truck nearly ran over a cyclist, who responded with a triumphant whistle. Lyra scribbled, "Remarkable resilience." Emotional response may be linked to survival instincts and reproduction potential. She made her way to a small cafe she had identified in her research as a social hub. Humans congregated here to exchange caffeine and awkward conversation. Lyra observed their interactions carefully. A young man spilled his latte while attempting to compliment a woman's scarf. The woman laughed, covering her mouth with one hand, while the man's face turned an alarming shade of red. Lyra's ears twitched with delight. Clearly, embarrassment is an accelerant in human mating rituals. She jotted another note. Further experimentation required. "Excuse me," said a voice. Lyra turned to see a barista with a wild tuft of hair and eyes that seemed permanently amused. "Are you new here?" "I am an observer," Lyra replied, choosing her words with scientific precision. "I am documenting human interactions, emotional responses, and potential mating behaviors. I may require guidance." She tilted her head, ears flicking as she studied the human. The barista laughed, a sound that made Lyra's ears vibrate slightly. "Well, I suppose you'll want a coffee. You humans or aliens tend to enjoy it." "Aliens," Lyra corrected with a polite nod. "From my perspective, humans seem delightfully convoluted." She studied the steaming cup as the barista handed it over. Liquid ingestion. Interesting. Perhaps the ritual of caffeine increases alertness during mating preparation. The barista snorted. "Or it just keeps you awake. You look like you could use a lot of it." Lyra jotted another note. Humor may serve as both social lubricant and reproductive enhancer. Must explore further. She sipped the coffee carefully, grimacing slightly at the bitter warmth. Curious. Humans appear to enjoy discomfort in conjunction with pleasure. Seated at a corner table, Lyra opened her tablet to review her initial observations. Her ears twitched as she noticed a couple arguing quietly nearby. The woman held a map upside down while the man gestured frantically. Lyra's fingers danced across her tablet. Observation. Confusion and miscommunication are frequent precursors to human bonding. Emotional tension may facilitate reproductive pairing. Her attention was interrupted by a loud crash. A child had toppled a display of pastries, sending croissants scattering across the floor. The father apologized repeatedly while the child laughed. Lyra scribbled furiously. Playfulness and forgiveness may serve as a testing ground for trust and compatibility. Lyra decided it was time to test human social norms herself. She approached a small group of university students playing a virtual reality game on tablets. She hovered, curious, and eventually joined. Her attempts to mimic their gestures resulted in multiple device malfunctions, a few frustrated shouts, and one student laughing so hard he fell off his chair. Lyra noted. Physical clumsiness may increase social bonding, advantageous for reproductive experimentation. As the afternoon waned, she wandered through the streets, observing the array of human interactions. Street performers juggling flaming objects, couples awkwardly holding hands, an elderly man offering directions to a lost tourist who refused to take the map. Lyra's ears twitched with delight. Human reproduction clearly requires more than biology. Humor, empathy, and tolerance of chaos are equally critical components. She paused in a small park, watching a dog chase its tail. Humans nearby were laughing, taking pictures, speaking in excited bursts. Lyra whispered to herself, "Fascinating. Even minor chaos inspires laughter, which may prime humans for emotional engagement." She jotted a note. The more absurd the scenario, the stronger the bonding signal. Night fell, and the city lights shimmered like distant stars reflected on Earth's surface. Lyra climbed to the roof of her rented apartment, ears flicking against the cool breeze. She gazed out at the neon glow and murmured, "So much data, so many variables. Yet the pattern emerges. Humans are inefficient, emotional, chaotic, and utterly fascinating." Her first attempt was at a campus cafe, where she introduced herself to a young man carrying 3 books and a laptop. He spilled his drink almost immediately. Lyra hid a small smile behind her sleeve. "Interesting. The liquid containment failure appears to accelerate social engagement," she said. The man blinked. I guess." "Yes," Lyra continued, "and your laughter indicates that chaos improves bonding. I am compiling extensive notes for research purposes." She tapped her tablet. Preliminary experiment successful. Humor and minor disaster promote mutual interest. Encouraged, she wandered into the university greenhouse, where a botany class was in session. Humans seemed captivated by growing things they did not understand. Lyra examined a group of students gently mishandling seedlings, their faces a mixture of concentration and embarrassment. She muttered, "Even when caring for other species, humans generate chaos and humor. Perhaps this is their natural preparation for reproduction." One student, a young woman with hair tied back in a messy braid, noticed Lyra observing. "Are you new?" "I am conducting research," Lyra replied with a slight bow. "I am learning how humans create bonds through inefficiency." She reached for a leaf, holding it delicately. "Fascinating. Humans induce humor even in non-human species. Possible extrapolation. Humor and awkwardness essential in all reproductive stages." The woman laughed and handed her a watering can. "Well, maybe you can help us not drown the plants." Lyra carefully poured water, noting the precision, or lack thereof. She jotted another note. Collaborative mishaps appear to foster mutual trust. Must test in interpersonal reproduction context. Later, Lyra visited the dormitories, hoping to observe the less formal aspects of human life. Students lounged on couches, eating snacks and joking loudly. One student attempted a dance move, tripping into a pile of pillows. Lyra's ears twitched with glee. Physical comedy appears highly effective at lowering social barriers. She made a mental note to incorporate accidental clumsiness in her future experiments. Night fell and the campus was bathed in neon lights. Lyra climbed to the roof of her building, her tablet buzzing with data. She reviewed the day. Laughter, mistakes, clumsiness, and minor accidents, all promoting empathy and emotional openness. She typed, "Conclusion. Human reproductive behavior cannot be reduced to biology alone. Chaos, humor, and emotional vulnerability are critical variables." A shooting star streaked across the sky. Lyra's long ears twitched. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I will attempt preliminary flirtation protocols under controlled conditions. If humor and embarrassment are as effective as predicted, reproduction may become a delightful comedy." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Humans were strange, inefficient, and chaotic, but also endlessly entertaining. And in the center of this mess, she, an alien visitor with long ears and endless curiosity, felt the thrill of discovery. Her tablet chimed with a reminder, "Document all emotional responses." Lyra leaned back, tapping a final note, "Observation. Engagement improves when humor is combined with minor disaster. Recommend continuation of study." High entertainment value. Ears twitching in amusement, she whispered to herself, "This human experiment may be the most enjoyable mission in the galaxy." Lyra's first thought upon entering the small apartment she had rented was that humans really needed better furniture engineering. Chairs creaked under the weight of enthusiasm, and the couch threatened to swallow anyone who sat too long. She set down her satchel and flicked her ears experimentally. Today, she decided, would be different. Today, she would transition from observation to controlled experimentation. She adjusted her hood and muttered, "Time to test my hypotheses about humor, chaos, and reproduction in practice." Her first participant arrived promptly. Jerk, a fellow student and unwitting volunteer, carried a stack of books taller than his head. He tripped on the threshold, spilling half of them onto the floor. Lyra's ears twitched in delight. "Excellent," she said. "The initial accident primes bonding. Please continue." Jerk looked confused. "You're serious?" "Entirely," Lyra replied, picking up a book with exaggerated care. "In human behavior, controlled disasters produce measurable emotional engagement." She jotted a note on her tablet. "Observation. Clumsiness facilitates humor-mediated social connection." They settled into the experiment. Lyra introduced herself formally, then quickly abandoned rigid protocols in favor of mild improvisation. She handed Jerk a small gadget designed to measure heart rate variability. "Hold this," she said, "while I demonstrate the art of flirtation through humor." Jerk raised an eyebrow. "You mean romance?" Lyra tilted her head. "Not romance, scientific exploration. One may mistake it for romance, but it is purely observational. Any emotional response is data." She flicked her ears with precision. "Consider it a rehearsal for reproductive mechanics. The first exercise was simple: make the participant laugh without causing harm. Lyra began with a playful commentary on human inefficiency. Observe how your species spills liquids, trips over nothing, and invents awkward rituals to signal interest. Fascinating, really. She demonstrated by attempting a mock stumble, nearly colliding with the coffee table. Jerk laughed outright, almost toppling a lamp in the process. Lyra's ears twitched. Confirmed. Minor chaos induces laughter and engagement. Next, she introduced mild embarrassment. They each had to confess a personal quirk. Jerk admitted he often spoke to his plants. Lyra noted this with enthusiasm. Excellent. Self-disclosure is an essential precursor to reproductive bonding. Your behavior is instructive. Then, it was her turn. I often miscalculate gravity when walking on unfamiliar planets. It results in unpredictable acrobatics, she admitted, demonstrating a carefully exaggerated stumble. Jerk laughed again, more freely this time. Observation. Shared imperfection enhances trust and emotional openness. Lyra moved on to more nuanced human behavior, proximity and touch. She instructed Jerk to pass objects with deliberate awkwardness, too close, too far, and sometimes with exaggerated gestures. Each attempt resulted in minor collisions, laughter, and corrective apologies. Perfect, Lyra noted. Physical comedy doubles as emotional calibration. She scribbled furiously on her tablet, observation. Touch mediated by humor significantly increases bonding potential. After a short break filled with snacks, she had discovered humans often bond over food. Lyra decided to test another hypothesis: cooperative problem-solving under humorous stress. She presented Jerk with a small puzzle designed to be frustratingly tricky. As they struggled together, laughing and occasionally arguing over the rules, Lyra's ears twitched with excitement. Shared struggle enhances empathy. This may be a core component of human reproductive readiness. By mid-evening, the experiment had escalated to playful verbal sparring. Lyra had discovered the human talent for clever insult comedy, teasing, exaggeration, and witty retorts. Each exchange produced laughter, flushed cheeks, and slight embarrassment. She jotted a note. Cognitive humor appears to synchronize emotional states, critical for reproductive engagement. Finally, she introduced a small, voluntary intimacy exercise. Nothing physical, only verbal closeness. Participants shared hopes, fears, and dreams while maintaining light-hearted commentary. Jerk confessed a lifelong fascination with space travel. Lyra shared her own alien perspective, adding humor to diffuse tension. On my planet, she said, we reproduce without awkwardness, but we also lack stand-up comedy. Humans may have traded efficiency for entertainment, and I find that compelling. By the time the exercise concluded, both were laughing and relaxed. Lyra's ears twitched in satisfaction. She reviewed her tablet. Minor accidents, humor, shared vulnerability, cooperative struggle, playful teasing, and verbal intimacy. All had contributed to increased trust and emotional openness. Conclusion: human reproduction is a complex interplay of humor, chaos, and emotional synchronization. As Jerk left, he glanced back nervously. So, you're really studying this for science? Entirely, Lyra said, adjusting her hood. Any emotional response observed is purely data. Though I admit, it is far more entertaining than I anticipated. Alone in the apartment, she jotted a final note. Hypothesis confirmed. Humans require chaos, humor, and vulnerability for effective reproductive engagement. Methodology: successful and enjoyable. Personal enjoyment: unexpectedly high. She leaned back, ears brushing against the soft light of the ceiling, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I shall deepen the investigation. Perhaps explore long-term bonding mechanisms. The comedy of human reproduction is far from over." Lyra allowed herself a small, sly smile. Humans were absurd, messy, and delightfully unpredictable. And she, an alien with long ears and uncontainable curiosity, had finally begun to participate in their chaotic, intimate world. Lyra floated above the city in the observation pod of her rented spacecraft, her long ears brushing against the controls as she reviewed the data collected over weeks on Earth. Each experiment, each awkward mishap, each burst of laughter was cataloged meticulously. Yet now, as she scrolled through her notes, she realized something unexpected. She was no longer just an observer. The humans had drawn her in, their inefficiency and humor weaving a strange, irresistible pattern into her own sense of curiosity and delight. Her tablet pinged with a message from Jerk. "Meet me at the park. I think you'll enjoy this." Lyra smiled and adjusted her hood, her ears twitching. Even after all her careful calculations and controlled exercises, the unpredictability of human spontaneity still thrilled her. On the park bench, Jerk was juggling 3 oddly shaped fruits while attempting to explain a theory about human emotions. Lyra sat beside him, her ears flicking as she mimicked his awkward gestures, dropping a fruit deliberately. "Fascinating," she said. "You humans seem to convert clumsiness into social cohesion. I must record this." Jerk laughed, brushing his hands through his hair. "You've been studying us for weeks, and you're still treating everything like an experiment." "Because it is," Lyra said with a slight grin. "But perhaps not entirely." Her ears twitched in acknowledgement of the thought she could barely admit aloud. She had grown fond of the chaos, the laughter, and the ineffable warmth of human imperfection. They walked through the park, observing couples, friends, and children alike. Lyra noted how small gestures, a shared umbrella, a tentative handhold, a whispered joke, created bonds stronger than any perfectly executed plan. She scribbled rapidly on